Hello, everyone. Should we start? We're up against a little bit of a clock thing because we've got a lot to squeeze in today, and I failed to squeeze everything in yesterday. So we're going to try and start on time. Um, Thanks very much again for being here. Some of you only arrived late last night, so it's good to see you today. We've got a lot of very interesting stuff today. People in the run up to this conference always say to me, we should do more on X, Y, and Z subjects. And some of those X, Y, and Z subjects are to look at the future of our industry in terms of business models. We all know that each of our companies are really challenged in terms of media businesses. It's not the most profitable sector of in life in business affairs these days, and so we're doing quite a bit on that today. We've got a special guest coming, Andrew. If you're in the room, where's Andrew? There we are, from Sky, who's head of business operations and diversified revenue at Sky. So we're going to be hearing from him a little bit later. We're going to be talking to some of our amazing younger journalists who've joining us from Montpellier and from the journalism school in Cologne to look at who is the future of our industry. It's probably not me, but it's probably them. So we're really looking forward to welcome you to your session later on. We're also, of course, going to touch on some other topics. Um, many of us are trying to link into how how media creators are managing to, in many ways, do a better job than established media brands in terms of how they connect and how they communicate to their audiences. And many creators have actually got much bigger followings and have much higher success engagement rates, even than very established and well-known media brands like the ones that we work for. Why is that? And we've got a couple of very special guests from We Are Era, which is a specialist company owned also by RTL, which really inhabits this space of trying to leverage the power of creators. And they work with brands, they work with media companies, they work across the whole of the media sector. And we'll be looking to them to try and give us a few tips about what is the magic ingredient that creators seem to have versus more established media brands as we struggle with that. And then, of course, we'll talk about Gaza because we kind of have to. And both Gaza and Ukraine are these conflicts that we've got used to having in our running orders, and we know that they're 2 and 3 years old. Maybe we're in a situation where Gaza is going to become a more positive story, maybe. We'll see. We'll find out later on. We have Tim here, as the head of international news from Sky. We'll be joined by our old friend Arad Nir, who's the anchor for Channel 12 News in Israel. And we'll also be joined by a Gazan journalist who will join us via Zoom from London, who managed to leave, brackets, escape Gaza about a year into the bombardment and the conflict. And he's subsequently been studying in London. And we'll focus more on how we as media companies try and report this very complicated story, particularly as we're on the edge of maybe being able to access it ourselves. We've got very used to being able to say, oh, we can't report from Gaza because we're not allowed in. Well, there's still a responsibility to do our job, even though that's been the case, but maybe that's about to change, and that presents some new challenges for us. And we have very exciting, even the most exciting part of the day is we'll have a new partner announcement. So stand by for that. So first of all, though, I like to, this is the most famous logo, I think, certainly one of the most famous logos in the world of news magazines. I guess sitting alongside Newsweek and Time, these three logos are the most famous. And right now, we're in the home of Stern magazine, which is a very, very, very famous, if you don't know already, German news magazine owned by a publishing house called Gruner and Jahr. A few years ago, RTL bought the company or merged the company, and it's now part of RTL Group. Hamburg is the home of Stern, but also the home of a lot of very famous publishing companies. You may even have seen their logos as we've been wandering past the area where we are. And in a way, you're our second host, because yesterday we had the Minister of Culture and Media welcome Mr. Hamburg. But now, seeing as we're in your building drinking your coffee, we're going to hear from you. And after Dr. Gregor Peter Schmitz talks to us about Stern and what's going on with his world and how he sees the media, we're going to do a session which really asks the question, what can publishers teach us? Because many of you in the room are coming from broadcast-based companies, of course, with your own digital apps and your own websites and your own digital products. But nevertheless, the origin of most of the companies in the room comes from more of the broadcasting tradition. So we're hoping that you can, along with your fellow panelists, give us all the top tips and secrets, because many of the transformations that have happened in the publishing world, we're also now facing in broadcasting. So we'll see how you get on with that. Good luck. Welcome.
Well, thanks so much, and welcome to Hamburg, where, as you can see, the sun always shines, and I will never have a cold. I apologize for my voice. I do have a terrible cold, but welcome to Hamburg and welcome to Stern. Yeah, it is a print magazine, so if you're in broadcasting, you're not at the wrong event. You're actually right here at the right one, because I think we can draw some conclusions from the transformation that we have experienced over the past years. Stern, as some of you might know, used to be the best-selling magazine, not just in Europe, but worldwide even. That is a long time ago, and it's not true anymore, to be honest. We still have a fairly large circulation, but of course, when I took over roughly 4 years ago, the big challenge was really to launch a serious digital transformation, and to do that under the umbrella also of RTL, as you can see. So that might be of interest to you, because we have been cooperating quite extensively over the past years when we were launching our new paid content offer Stern Plus with RTL. I heard some of you actually partied hard last night, so you're probably too busy to watch television, but there was a program out last night on grievances in retirement homes that was aired on RTL, and that we had been working on for a long time with a print team, but then also a television team. We do that roughly 6-7 times a year now, and it's one of the most successful parts of the collaboration, that we really do tough investigative reporting that is then not just shown on RTL, but also at Stern Plus. But I think we're going to elaborate more on that when we have the panel here. What are some of the conclusions that we could draw from the publishing world, or some of the challenges that we are facing, that you are facing as well, maybe a little later. I think RTL is hitting some of the main roadblocks that we experienced roughly 10 years ago now. But I just want to show you a very brief video of what we have been working on for the past 2 or 3 years, and how serious we were about this digital transformation, and about the way to bring a very venerable print institution that is still done or produced every week with great care and love to detail into the digital realm and into the digital world. Bear with us, we're not in television, so it might not be the perfect movie, but I think it's a good trailer. So if you could just start the trailer briefly, and then you might learn a little bit. I have to admit, this video looks a bit like mission accomplished. We're not there yet, but we are on track, and we are on track to achieve our goals by 2026. I think we're going to discuss some of the challenges that we are facing on the panel later on, but I just want to highlight one point, or 2 points actually, that were very crucial to us. It was really the transformation of the entire organization, which is probably even tougher in the magazine business and in some other areas. I mean, I literally had people in our staff, in our newsroom, that were used to writing maybe 1, maximum 2 long pieces per year. And to get them to adjust to a new digital environment where they have to maybe even work in shifts, do digital reporting, go on Instagram or others, was a real challenge over the past years. And I think we have come a long way there. And the other big challenge ahead of us, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to focus so decisively on paid content, is really the dependence on SEO and the upcoming challenges of AI. And I'm sure you're going to discuss that here over the course of the next 2 days. To us, it's a huge challenge, and it might really transform the business, and it will pose a big question in the magazine business. What is actually quality? What is excellence for a weekly magazine? Does that mean that we should focus even more on excellent reporting, on investigative reporting, on long-term reporting, and leave all the other stuff basically to the AI? I mean, these are some of the questions that we are struggling with now. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to the panel. Enjoy our coffee here in the building. If you want to venture around, it is a pretty nice building. It has a beautiful terrace on the 7th floor, another beautiful one on the 4th, and you can look right across here to our immediate competitor, the Spiegel. So go ahead and take advantage of that. Thank you very much for coming.
Let's welcome up to the stage Rasa, who's the editor-in-chief of DELFI. DELFI is a very, very big digital entity in the Baltic states. Rasa actually is based in Vilnius. And Susan from the Journal. One of Ireland's leading digital publishers, should we say that? Yes. Who's managing editor of the Journal. So, Peter, let's start with I did a lot of extensive research for this panel on Wikipedia this morning, and I saw that at its height, Stern had a subscription or a readership of nearly 2 million. Where did those people go?
Well, probably most of them died, actually. Yeah, it was a very different environment. It was, of course, a far less competitive environment. We still have a print circulation of more than 300,000 a week. But of course, it's declining, and that's true unfortunately, for all print magazines. No matter what cover story you pick and how careful your reporting is, you lose roughly 10 to 15, sometimes even 20% in sales every year, and that is true for Spiegel and others. Others have managed to compensate that through paid content subscriptions, and that is our goal too, so that you can keep your overall circulation roughly stable. Yeah, but there will be no way back to the old times when actually the profit margins were close to the drug industry or the hedge fund industry. That's not true anymore. No.
And is that because people just don't have the attention span for longer content? Because actually, in some other parts of the industry, and you're doing it yourself with investigative journalism, we know that there is a huge appetite for longer form, for context, for really explanatory articles. And so in a way, that's what you're providing. And yet at the same time, you're saying we have an aging audience, and they're demographically, they're dying off, and it's very difficult to onboard younger people.
Well,
how can both things be true?
It is very difficult to onboard younger people. Basically, it is virtually impossible to sell a subscription or a print subscription to anyone under the age of 40. I mean, even if you bribe them, even if you offer iPads to them, so they will still complain that they get this print magazine sent in the mail every week. And as it comes to the attention span, yeah, that's true, because most of our reporting, even when we did the digital overall, is aimed at people using their cell phones and not even their desktops anymore. So you can see it in the statistics. If you have a really long cover story that might be hugely interesting and very well researched and well written, the number of people really reading it to the very end is very, very limited by now. So that is changing. It is becoming more of a niche product, not in the overall impact, because if you look at all the numbers, if you look at the digital impact we have, so we reach probably more people than ever. But in terms of monetization, it's becoming more of a niche project. I think print will be around for decades still, but it will be far more expensive, or the magazine itself will be far more expensive. It will be a much more limited audience print-wise.
Mm. So, Rasa, let's pick up with you on that. In a way, the Stern has this massive history. It's coming from numbers which you probably admit you might not ever reach again, because you had a historical high. But conversely, you're representing an organization which is younger, which is growing. You started from zero and you're growing. But do you recognize the same challenges, or are they different?
Good morning. Actually, yeah, I'm listening to you and I hear the same problems. We are digital only or digital first organization. We didn't have print outlets. Just we started from scratch in 2000, and but yeah, our audience in general, like our subscription audience, is 40 plus still. We are like traditional media, digital media, but still we struggle by attracting younger audience. It's the same problem. And we have started to diversify our business model. We started two new revenue streams like subscription, only digital subscriptions, and linear TV, which is a very strange case, never heard before. But it works in a way for us because we have a very tiny GRP rate, but still we manage to reuse our content everywhere, like in linear, YouTube, and in our news website. And in this way, we manage to get some additional revenues from our linear television.
Susan, what about you? How do you these younger audiences, which we're all chasing, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that today? How does the Journal in Ireland try to reduce the age of its average reader?
Do we want to reduce the average age? This is the interesting, I suppose, concept for us now, because we were digital disruptors in late 2010 when we started. Like DELFI, we didn't have to worry about a digital first strategy because we were digital only. So we were a disruptor in the Irish market. There wasn't a lot of online news, and anything that was provided largely by newspapers and by the state broadcaster, all of which I guess at that time were tentative around cannibalizing their print subscriptions, their print sales, and RT, would have used it a lot for streaming and so on. So for us to come into the market and present free to view news in a digital format, and we had apps very, very early. In early 2011 we developed our Android and iOS app, so we have had some advantages where SEO is not necessarily a huge thing for us. While we would have revenue still at the moment, say from Google Showcase, if anyone is familiar with that, in terms of curating our news. So it appears for Google News users, of course, Google is, as we know, they're all starting to move away from any partnerships with the news industry. So you have to be careful about where your revenue comes from. But certainly most of our revenue would have been from eyeballs, right? So from advertising revenue. So we're facing very similar challenges that I think a lot of people are facing, which is a decline in advertising, because we were getting all our advertising obviously from digital spend. Now the digital spend of brands and clients and governments or whoever wants to put money into advertising to the public has grown larger because there is so much more activity online. But the size of the pie that digital media or any media get is much, much smaller because there's much more direct spend on social, that kind of thing. So decline of advertising, particularly around the time of COVID, a lot of campaigns people are not spending, fell off a cliff, never came back to exactly where it was. Decline in audiences. We were disruptors. There is much more choice now. There's much more choice among legacy media. Oh, now we're legacy media too, after 15
Join
years.
the club.
Join the club. And also, much like, okay, I don't think too many have died yet, but our audience is aging as well. So there is a perception in Ireland that we have a really young audience. No, we don't. Our audience is, we do not have the 18 to 24-year-olds. So I'm just looking at, I'm sorry, I'm going to be looking at you every time I talk about this, but I'd love to, I can't wait to hear this conversation later. But we, a large number of our audience is over 34. So we have a big group of kind of certain kind of middle-aged sort of area, and then weirdly a lot of over 65s. And I think it's because our platforms are very accessible, and we've always thought about, without dumbing down the news, how do we make it reach those people who need it most? And being access all areas for us has really worked. But of course, that lends us to a crisis point right now where there are so many free options, and we no longer have the cachet for the advertising clients. While we still have a very large audience, we would be second only to the state broadcaster's online arm, and they have a lot of money, a lot of people. So on audience levels, we're still there. We're still it, according to Reuters' digital news report. So we've started looking at some of the value-driven quality journalism that we do, and looking at also even how we present it. That has been lost. The things that we thought, we were digital innovators, it moves so fast. We saw the panel on AI yesterday, and we were talking about quickly things proceed. You said if you go 3 months without reading newsletters, you feel out of touch. This is the same for us. So if we were to look at our apps, they look quite simplistic now. So we're actually at the bottom of a sort of an S curve at the moment on a reader's revenue strategy. And we already have some revenue from readers, but it's voluntary. So we can talk about that probably a little bit
Well, I was
later.
going to ask you,
yeah.
when you look at the two revenue
Mhm.
streams that I imagine you have, probably advertising and subscription are the two
Yes.
dominant ones.
Yeah.
Is it 50-50 or is it?
Gosh, no, we're about 15% reader revenue.
So you're trying to grow the subscription
We're
part.
trying to double that.
And how much is
yeah.
free? Is it everything behind a paywall, or?
So we have the Journal, which is our flagship news thing. We have the 42, which is a sports writing site. That is paywalled.
Yeah.
And that was a decision that we were able to make a few years ago. And actually, I think it's those things where you have little experiments or little projects that you're doing, we learn a lot from. We heard yesterday about the agentic collaborations. It's through those kind of projects that we've started gathering data and insights that have led us to some certainty about, or at least some confidence in the strategy we're putting forward for subscriptions. And with the 42, we had a membership years ago for that. So there was a certain amount to be part of the club. You got to join WhatsApp groups where you got to talk with the sports writing journalists. They'd be well known in Ireland. They're really, really good. They use a lot of digital tools to show, to analyze through replay. So quite nice, unique way of storytelling for the sports audience in Ireland, which is quite diverse and very sports interested. But it became clear that we were able to flip that. Sports is very transactional. So there is a muscle memory in people of having to pay to go to see live action, to pay now for subscriptions for, to watch it on TV. So that was something that was easy enough once we put the triggers in place. So we now have fairly sustainable sports offering. But within our journal situation, we've also gone, how can we expand the editorial offering beyond what is now very available to people? So the breaking news part. So we started investing in investigative journalism about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. But we did so through an experiment, which was to set up a separate platform that crowdsourced the suggestions. What stories are we not covering? What is not getting national attention, and so on, and creating a platform where people could actually crowdfund individual projects. We can talk about that more later, but we learned a lot from that has allowed us to continue investigative journalism in a form that's now more aligned and core to the journal. The same with fact checking. That's quite a sustainable effort within the newsroom now because of the way we're able to fund it.
Okay, and Rasa, how much of DELFI is behind a paywall or a subscription service?
It's we have till 15% of our content under paywall, but it means that the best our content is under paywall, because the rest is like news agencies information that was generic information.
And what are the tricks you're using to try and convert people from taking what's there for free to actually getting them to pay?
Yeah, it's a very difficult path to go, and it's a funnel model that you try to get people registered first. Funnel starts from that you have a lot of anonymous readers, they are so called, and then you start to get them registered once. Then you have newsletters for registered users. You interact with them, you try to show the value for them to be registered, and then they are more willingly subscribe to your content. And then you go, like, you get subscribed reader. That's the point you work with. Usually in Lithuania, the starting point is very low, like from €1. You start from €1 monthly, and then you try to raise the price by working with this audience. But actually, it's very difficult because we were also digital only media outlet, and people were used to get everything for free. We had that we were us who learned people to read everything for free, and then we say, and at least, okay, then now it's time to pay. And they are quite surprised why it is so. And yeah, we are working every day to convince them to pay, to subscribe us. And of course, the only one solution is to get to have quality journalism, like investigative stories, quality interviews, and also to work with journalist brands. We all know that people do not believe in brands, they believe in people. And you have to show your people, you have to show that those are real people working every day with content. We just launched our campaign of journalists that I care the same things that you care. We show our journalists in their like family lives, in their everyday routines, to show that we are like regular people like you are. Please join us, because a lot of people think in Lithuania that content is written by ChatGPT. I get this question in different conferences. They ask, what part of your content is written by ChatGPT? Because somehow they think that journalists doesn't exist, or they do I don't know what. And that's why our goal is to show that we have 100 people editorial, and what we are doing every day.
Adds value, right? Gregor, Peter, I think you probably identify with a lot of that discussion. It sounds like the same themes that you were talking about earlier.
Oh no, totally. I mean, it's really about the question of the value of a subscription. I mean, and the way you attract people to subscribe, and that can be frustrating sometimes. I mean, and that is true for all legacy media environments. If you look at our numbers, for example, this week or so, the most popular subscription article is one about sugar daddies, yeah, which is not exactly the kind of brand that we wanted to feature a long time ago, but it is. I mean, it matters to people,
yeah,
and it brings them in. Once they are a member of our community, then they start reading the long investigative pieces as well, and saying that they realize it's a subscription that is different from Bild or a tabloid or so. But and that is not just true for us. We had an editor-in-chief of FRZ, which is probably the most highbrow magazine anyone can, newspaper anyone can think of, and it's very similar to them. I mean, they are very successful right now with sugar daddies as well. So, but that of course challenges us journalistically, because we sometimes devote huge resources, manpower, and time, particularly on long investigative pieces. And then after a year and a half, it's finally ready for publication, and maybe throws in 200 subscriptions, which is fine, but compared to what we spend on it, of course not enough. And that is, again, because we are talking about RTL, in a way it's different. It's very similar to subscription models in television as well. If you look at RTL Plus, for example, which is hugely successful, it has more than 7 million subscribers. If you look at the most successful formats on RTL Plus, it's almost exclusively reality TV content, which is not what the people at RTL normally identify with, I would suppose. So you wouldn't see the flagship news show RTL Aktuell necessarily there, but you see whatever. I don't even know the titles of some of these formats that are hugely successful. So it changes, of course, the focus of your organization, and it challenges us. I mean, I have many award-winning journalists in my newsroom who say, well,
when you put them on the sugar daddy story,
we want to get up every morning and we want to do investigative reporting. We don't want to spend more time on narcissists or sugar daddies or narcissistic sugar daddies that are probably even more successful. And that is a constant struggle within the organization.
the other interesting thing that you've been through is we used to talk a lot about the convergence of media, and in a way, here we are, a converged conference room full of people from both digital print background and broadcast. And of course, your company was swallowed, that's a nice way of putting it, by RTL and Bertelsmann. And so and I know from ENEX is also part of the RTL group, so we're aware that there was a lot of work, and there is a lot of work about how to synthesize these two organizations. Where are there rooms for cooperation? How can we, ally within the organization in terms of cooperation on journalism and other things? So when that process started, what was it that you were struck by when you went into RTL and thought, oh my God, I didn't realize they did it like that? And what was the reverse of that when RTL and broadcast people came to you? What did you learn from each other,
Well, I think it
if
was.
anything?
Oh, we did, I think, and some of the lessons we learned show that that it is very hard to actually cooperate in some areas. For example, I have a very highbrow culture section, and if you put them together with the RTL culture people, that will never work. It's just a very different approach. I think we were sometimes surprised that television gigs take so much longer to prepare, that it's organizationally so much more advanced and challenging. So when we cooperate, for example, on these investigative projects, sometimes people don't realize that for television, you would probably need to plan that months or even years in advance, while it is a little easier than on the print side. But it can be very powerful, particularly in this investigative section, because, for example, a few months ago, we had a really hard-hitting investigative piece on a young reporter who managed to infiltrate a super right-wing terror cell here in Germany. And that only worked because she had an undercover camera with her, and that was so much more powerful than any text that could ever be written about that experience. And I think that drove home that point to many of my colleagues or reporters in the newsroom, that is cool, yeah? That you can actually show some of the grievances much more effectively if you use film as well. And since then, they are much more interested in that. So I think that worked very well. It works very well in the news section as well. When we have a good news story or a good interview or so, then to cooperate with RTL Aktuell or with the news shows, that's not a problem at all. I think in the overall organization, you have to pick the areas where you cooperate very carefully. And that was probably one of the, and I think even the executives would admit that by now, that was one of the downsides of the initial approach, where they were just trying to merge everything, and that didn't work.
Yeah. I guess a nice segue into video, because there's another thing where when we talk about convergence, normally that ends up as a conversation about video and how you handle video and the balance between video on your digital platforms versus text, and what kind of video. Is it short form video? Is it longer form video? How much time do you spend thinking about video and its place on the journal?
More now than we did in the past. So I think to a certain extent, when you're a digital publisher, particularly when being online at all was the innovation, we became quite text driven. I come from a print background myself, and had worked in papers for like 15 odd years before I came to this. So that was probably the thing that we lagged behind and that we're catching up on. I will say, though, that because I suppose the pivot towards people viewing the news through their phones, which I think has been, for us, has been how we've thought about it. We make everyone, before they publish their stuff, they have to look at it on the mobile version, because you're working off a laptop, and the two things don't converge. 5% of our audience comes through desktop, the rest are mobile, and 80% are through the apps directly as well. We've tried very hard to create a relationship where how people access us is to go to the journal, the J on their home screen. That means that we have to think always that presentation. It has meant that our journalists are all generally rather good at, when they're out, it's just second nature to get the clip, get the photo. They don't have to be videographers. We do work with videographers for longer form things, particularly around the investigations and so on. But we are always, I think people tend to think, at journalists, you're often thinking, what's my headline? What's my lead going to be? You have to think that way with video as well. Like, why are we shooting this particular video? We're a very small team for our impact and our reach in Ireland. We cannot afford to go out and shoot hundreds of hours of video. I was very jealous of the archive yesterday of somebody of RTL, where you need AI to go through your video archive. Sadly, that is not our dilemma. So we do have to be very thoughtful about the kind of video that we shoot, and we also have to be thoughtful about how many ways in which can we repurpose this. This reason. So if we're going to go to a protest, for example, which we do not have the challenges of our Serbian colleagues that we heard yesterday, but we certainly have a lot of right-wing protests in Ireland. A lot of the online disruption has and disinformation. We have a fact-check unit as well as made us targets. We've had a big protest outside our building, and it's we've had people targeted going to protest. So you have to make those safety decisions around journalism. I mean, it's the journalism part of it too. But then when we are out there and we're getting it, we're thinking, make it worth our while. So we might want it to be in line in an article that brings to life what somebody's saying. Now, that's where we're lagging behind, and we're actually trying to develop better tech solutions for presenting that kind of work so that you get that multi-layered storytelling experience that isn't just for show. I mean, people still to this day talk about snowfall, the New York Times articles. Jesus spare me, because it is not the way to get people to the bottom. A lot of that it's beautiful, but it's not going to serve a daily user. So we have to think, how will we layer in video? So we're thinking about interstitials. We do a lot of pieces to camera with our journalists as well. We use social media not necessarily for direct link backs, but to try and cultivate that funnel, to try and tell younger people we're there and we're probably quite in touch with what's of concern to you. So we would use some of the investigative stuff, for example, or explainers. We do a lot of explainers and debunks, and we'll make versions of those for social that are meant to travel without necessarily referring you back to the journal. And to do that as well, I think this is really something that we'd probably share with other organizations where we were kind of young. I would have been the older person in our organization. Can you imagine? But we have more aging newsroom now as well, but we do have younger people, and we've made sure to create working groups when we are doing efforts that are something that are new to us or that we're trying to get information. We go and we talk to other people. I went to the Guardian last year. They were super helpful around, I suppose, how you advocate for your organization having a unique value to people, a proposition to support it. So these kind of networks are amazing, but also using the people in your newsroom about what it is that they know and bring it together. So it's not like setting someone off and just you do that. Like, this is not the face of TikTok. Do you know what I mean? So, we have amazing people in the room who are way better at doing that. And we have amazing technical fact checks that we have. We've the Ireland's only fact check, verified fact check unit. And the people who will go through a long technical fact check and go through the raw sources that we link to and so on are the people who least need to see it. So if we're trying to say to people who we want to subscribe, we've a unique place in Irish media. If you want us to exist or you really enjoy what we do and you want to see our deep dives, subscribe. But we also need to serve that kind of public service content that we do. And that can be a version of that fact check that carries through TikTok where the actual disinformation is happening. So we're trying to consider all of that with a piece of video. So I think that's the kind of we have a lot to think about, I think. And broadcasters, we feel like we have probably more in common now with broadcasters, the conversations I've had the last few days, than maybe I have with print media as much, even though we're regulated by the Press Council of Ireland. They didn't know where to put us. So again, we were like the first digital member of that. So I think it's just the learning thing is absolutely massive for us, yeah.
And Rasa, you're kind of unique in an ENEX context because your edition of DELFI is in Lithuania, and we also have a Lithuanian television partner. Where's Rolanda Senegle? There we are. And somehow you managed to coexist and be nice to each other at dinner. And that's good, not to be taken for granted. So is that because you see your audiences as being different? Because I'm trying to paint a picture here of we're all battling for the same audience and the same attention. And yet actually here you are, your two businesses, and you're managing to coexist. How come?
I always say I can talk only about myself, that I'm very open-minded editor. What I mean by saying that when I started to be editor-in-chief of DELFI Lithuania, that was 8 years ago, we decided that we gonna propose for every our journalist the newest iPhone with one condition: please film something to your work. And it worked, and we called them universal soldiers, and people they were so happy to get a newest iPhone. Just they filmed something, and it could be very simple, like video shoot in, I don't know, protest or accident, because journalists see a lot of interesting things around them, and just to to film, that was a very good idea. That's so this way started our linear television in general, and then people started to film a lot. We made our video studio in our editorial, totally open video studio that for traditional television was like shocking contrast, talking about television quality, because there were a lot of noises. You can hear people laughing, for example, or something, and we were just talking in our editorial. And we saw that this way we have already 20 different formats, because almost every section had their format. I don't know if you can call it format, that was like podcasts or something, just video talks. But we saw that for our people who are coming for interviews, that works much better than to give just a simple text interview for journalists, because in Lithuania we have this television magic, that people want to go to the video broadcast and to show up there. And we saw that it worked, and then we started more and more formats. After that, we experimented. My second name is an experiment, I think, in editorial.
You notice I didn't try to pronounce your second name.
Yeah, no. I think that people are calling me an experiment because almost every week we have different experiment with our content. But I'm constantly thinking what to do, how to bring people back from social media to quality journalism, because what we do in general, it's a quality journalism, because we are working every day to create content, and we have like very strict rules. We are regulated. We are coming in the morning till midnight. We are working to have a content, and good content, and that's why I'm thinking about formats. I think that somehow we have to rethink formats, not the not the content itself, just and it's my goal now to find different formats.
It just reminded me when you said about formats that you're right. Nothing, you can never really discard anything. And I was thinking about print, and you've gone to linear. We've actually produced books, and it was to do with the sports storytelling. That's what I've heard. But it's we did it because our sports storytelling. We were able to produce a book of essays, and we did that for several years. And it was part of your subscription that you would get this at Christmas, but you could also buy it. So we had it in shops. Now we have so much going on that we've decided to pull back from that initiative. But for us, nothing is off the table. And the idea that we were producing an actual print book was almost like, what are they doing? Because we'd run an April Fool's joke. I don't know if April Fool's jokes are a big thing outside Anglophone media, but we'd run one year where it was like the journal was going to produce a print edition, and it had me and the CEO with like photoshopped, like edition of the journal, and you'd be able to cut out a place where you could write comments and post them in, and we might publish them a few years later. So it's kind of hilarious. And then we came out with a book, and we're like, it's not a joke, and it did really well for us. But it is that sense of what is appropriate to the audience at that given time. And how can you support your journalists to do? We don't expect journalists to suddenly be really good on TV, but if we expect them to go on other media to distribute their stories, then we want to support them with media training, for example. So that would be from us, yeah.
We're going to take some questions, so please get ready with your questions. Just before we do that, because I normally like to, you're too good, because normally I have to encourage it, but you're there straight, so that's good. Just before we go to the questions, just very briefly, everyone in the room here is responsible not only for television output, but also for the websites they run and the social media applications that they're on with their journalism. Just give a very brief bit of advice from a publisher's perspective to the broadcasters.
Uh, well, I really think the biggest challenge for the next years is going to be distinction and quality. I mean, because the rest is going to be done by AI. So that, I mean, I think you have to recalibrate your focus.
Okay, that's really good. Rasa?
Experiment and try to find a personal approach with your audience.
Okay. Susan?
I think all of the things we've talked about, so quality, experimentation, trying formats, the purpose of doing that is to re-establish trust with audiences, particularly if you're trying to get them to subscribe. You have to give them a reason to trust you, and that might be creating deeper relationships with them through content, through formats, through access to journalists.
Siobhan, what have I missed?
I was just wondering, with young people, what is causing the challenge to getting them on board? Is it that there's a lack of trust in media? Is it sort of compassion fatigue? Like, what do you think it is? And then just a question for Susan. Do you find that in terms of the paywall, it's easier to sell stuff like sport or or the sugar daddies because people want to buy stuff that's an indulgence, a treat? And does that mean that it's more of a challenge for news because maybe they find it a bit of a downer?
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant point, and that's why we've gone out with a paywall in sport years before. We've tried it with reversing the free to air news that we've had, because a lot of it is to do with people's habits, and so people have that transactional understanding of how they access sport, and with entertainment, they'll still buy the magazines or whatever. They might pay for Substack to their favorite kind of writer. For news, what we have seen, which has helped us a lot in the last 2 years of our strategy, is an increasing willingness to pay for certain types of news, and for us to constantly broadcast what it takes to produce the particular kind of news that people have been indicating to us through our experiment with investigative journalism on our platform, which was called Noteworthy, and now we've folded it in to be the Journal Investigates, where you no longer have to pay for it. But we had this whole value exchange, and we would get people to fund it, and then we would say to them, part of the deal here is if you fund this project and that funds us to actually produce the journalism, we put it out there, we promise to put it out in the journal, which is a really big audience, but we will also create an impact plan where we will allow anyone else who wants to republish it to do so, just with a credit to us, because part of the deal with you guys is you want the story highlighted. So we had local media, regional media, reproduce our stories where they were pertinent to their audience, because they couldn't afford to produce that journalism, and national outlets were not doing that kind of deep dive on local issues. And so it's trying to find those value propositions for people.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I just want to answer briefly to your
Very
question on the young readers. I mean, it is very challenging because sometimes, even within the newsroom and with the younger reporters, so they make the point that we should put more stuff, for example, on the cover that appeals to younger audience. And we've tried that a few times lately. We had an interview a few months ago with Taylor Swift, and we were very proud of it. It was really funny to see that, because then Swifties put videos on TikTok how they were venturing into newsstands or into supermarkets and bought an actual print copy. and that they didn't even know what that is, but they bought it because Taylor was on it. But overall, it bombed. Yeah, it didn't work at all, because you drew in a few younger readers, but you also lost many of the older customers. So that is very hard. And overall, I think it's just a change of habits. I mean, that's not just true for magazines, it's true for everyone. I was editor-in-chief of a large daily before, and there the average age of the reader, of the subscriber, was 68, and the average age of the incoming customers was 64. So it's not exactly like you were reaching out to younger titles. They're just not used to that anymore, and that will not change. I mean, no matter how hard we try.
May I just that? Yeah, I think that in general we are old-fashioned for them. I interact a lot with youngsters.
Lame stream.
Yeah, something lame, and that's because they are generation of platforms. It's a different place to get information. They are not used to put Stern or DELFI. They are used to go to TikTok and get proposition of 30 different creators. I think that's the problem. And we can be, and we are in TikTok. For example, DELFI is the second biggest media brand in Lithuania after national broadcaster in TikTok, but we can't find the model to monetize it. And I don't know how to solve this problem.
I think we have to ask ourselves actually hard questions as well about we want the younger audiences, and absolutely habits have changed about how they're consuming news. We have to ask ourselves hard questions though about, are we actually representing what are the issues that are important to younger people? So we do a lot on environmental and climate crisis stuff, and I think that that's not a massive lens for a lot of media. And that's where we've gotten people in. So if we're going to do something, the Taylor Swift's a brilliant example of that, but is that a consistent approach that you're taking to a younger audience? Do they trust you? Do they believe that this is something that you're doing? And for us, big property crisis in Ireland, probably not uncommon in the rest of Europe. And a lot of people are doing that through the lens of house prices. And that's not speaking at all to people under the age of 30 who are like, our issue here is we can't afford the rent. Never mind save up enough to get a deposit for a house. And so when we started publishing way more stories that were empathizing and reflective of people's experience of literally having nowhere to live, that was when you get a little bit more trust from people that you're probably going to reflect what their concerns are and ask the questions on their behalf.
I just can add that youngsters are mostly not reading, they are watching, and it's an opportunity for broadcasters, actually.
Oh, good. Let's end on optimism. Camille. This will be the last question because we've got to keep to time. Yeah.
Hello, Camille from TVN Poland. I have two questions, short ones. One is, but do you think that those young audience will eventually come to our media brands when they are older, like when they are 35, or no? So it's like our viewership will decrease till we extinct like dinosaurs. And the second question is for Gregor. Your digital transformation, does that new income from subscription complements from what you have lost in traditional readership, or it's not yet that point?
No, not yet. I mean, print is still very important to us. I mean, we still make roughly 50-60% of our revenues with print, but as I said, it's declining. But you can compensate for it through paid content, yeah. And we are trying to build that revenue stream, particularly because, as has been outlined, the advertising revenues are just not coming back. I mean, it's particularly pronounced this year, but yeah, it's just not returning. So I think that is at least for established print brands, that's probably the best model you have. And you can, it is much more lucrative because the print circulation has become, or bringing the print product to the customer has become so much more expensive that the profit margin, of course, in the digital realm is much better. Yeah. And even though the prices are lower, you probably have a better net margin in the end. So it can be a model for the future, but it's so much more troublesome in many ways, because you all know about churn rates, about people terminating then the subscription after a long time. That wasn't true for the print subscription. It was print subscribers, the only reason why they canceled the subscription was because they died, most of the time. And that is very different in the digital field. And that makes it much harder.
I don't know for whom was the first question.
Why don't you have a go at it? How do those audiences never coming to us?
We were learned that audience get mature to news, but now I think that not. They are mature, but not in our legacies. They are like I'm looking to Lithuanian young people. They are global people. They are like consuming creators, podcasters from all around the world, and for them there is no difference, like it's English or Lithuanian or other language. And I can't find the reason why they should go like directly to our news website. It's sad for me to say this, but now at the moment I can't find.
Susan, last word.
Yeah, I think that's why the play for us, for example, is, while we think we can retain some volume, is to really dive deep into the people who we can have that relationship with and throw quite a bit into that. That's what we're doing with our strategy at the moment. We have identified 3 cohorts. One is the quick and easy. They will never pay. They don't particularly rate us, but they flybys. There's the middle cohort that quite like us. If they've been with us for quite a while, they're probably aging with us. I keep saying that, it's depressing. But they may pay, but they want more general stuff. And then we have the explorers, and they are the people who we have the journalism for it. We're not successfully surfacing it for them enough. We're not threading it through for them, and they have the highest willingness to pay. So the people who are the least comfort zone for us are actually now our target. So you have to be really honest with yourself where they're going to come from. As for younger people ending up consuming news the way I do now, like my 10-year-old son is not going to be asking me in 10 years' time for us to get a landline back into the house of a phone. Like, the ship has sailed, and we have to figure out. I just think broadcast is in such a great position in a different way. We're playing to catch up. You guys are already in the AV space where this is exactly what we're saying that they are playing. So if you can figure that out, well, we'll follow you.
Well, I have to say it's a very disappointing panel, because I thought the silver bullet was going to be provided by you three. And you've singularly failed to do that. And you've thrown it back on us. We're meant to have all the answers, which is kind of worrying. But anyway, thank you very much. I think it's been a really fascinating panel, and thanks all for your time and coming today. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Yeah, of course. So